Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. If you're new, which I hope you are, the Quest for the Bestest is the podcast in which us four backlot boys review every single Palme d'Or winner, which is our new series. If you're old, you'll have already seen hundreds of episodes about the Best Picture winners, which we recently finished viewing every single one of them. We ranked them, as is the our impetus here on the Quest for the Bestest, and then we gave them their own Oscar ceremony in which we celebrated and hated upon the very best and the very worst of Best Pictures. But now we venture into new territory. We venture forth, basically,
lands.
across the ocean,
yes,
to France, because we have decided that the Palme d'Ors, every single one of them, are interesting films. They have something. We don't know yet what they have, but they've got something in there to...
certain je ne sais quoi, maybe?
You could say. We're gonna...
How many times are we going to say that in the next 100 episodes? Oh, God.
We're going to investigate. We're going to watch them all, but here's the kicker. We're going to do it in a random order. And now, our first film, the one we are discussing right now, is Parasite. We didn't pick it in a random order, though. It's because way back 3 years ago in October, we watched Parasite as the very first Quest for the Bestest Series 1 movie, and we gave it...
3 years, 1 month, and 10 days ago.
Yeah.
Or 98,064,000 seconds ago.
Oh, okay. Nice.
All right. Tucker was counting all that time.
Yeah, it's true.
But we did Parasite then, and it only seems fitting to start again with that film here, because we've grown a little bit in our abilities and pretty much everything, I would say, since that review was posted. So here we are giving Parasite a brand new Quest analysis. But first, I've got a question that's rolling around in the back of my mind, and I think one Tanner Dykstra will be able to answer it. What the heck is the Palme d'Or?
Well, Timo, I'm glad you asked.
Pulls out whiteboard. Palme d'Or for dummies.
All right, so I'm going to take you back to the year 1937. Okay.
Remember it well.
Yes. Well, it was a bit of a tumultuous time in Europe back in 1937. And as with all good things, the Cannes Film Festival and its top prize, the Palme d'Or, was sort of born out of spite towards fascists, let's say. So it actually started out as a counter-programming, essentially, to the Venice Film Festival, which was at the time under the control of fascist Italy and Benito Mussolini. Mostly because in 1937, at the Venice Film Festival, it was basically ensured that the French anti-war film, The Grand Illusion by Jean Renoir, would not win the top prize at that festival. So after that, and also they gave, in 1938, they gave it to an Italian war film, and they gave the Best Foreign Award to a Nazi Germany documentary about the 1936 Olympics. Basically, the French, British, and American jury members of the Venice Film Festival basically said, hey, we're not all about this whole fascism thing, especially as it invades our picks for what should be the best movie at this film festival, so we're out of here. So then, French historian Philippe Erlanger and Robert Favre-Labret, who was a film critic, they basically went to a French minister of education named Jean Zay and said, hey, we should make our own film festival. And Jean Zay said, that's a fantastic idea. So, the following year, 1939. In 1939, Cannes, a city in France, was selected as the venue for the Cannes Film Festival, a first annual. Mostly because it was a picturesque location on the French Riviera. It was nice and pretty, and they could get all the fancy people there and do their fancy things, as they have done for how long has it been? 1939, or well, I'll get to it. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Almost a century.
Yeah. Okay, opening night of the very first Cannes Film Festival, August 31st. A whole gaggle of the biggest Hollywood stars of the time show up on a ocean liner chartered by MGM. You might be asking, who are these stars that they got to come to the first ever Cannes Film Festival? Oh, such little names as Gary Cooper, Cary Grant, Tyrone Power, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Mae West, Spencer Tracy, Norma Shearer, and Paul Mooney. Just the little names in Hollywood at the time. So, opening night, as I said, August 31st, 1939. Opened with the first ever film screened at a Cannes Film Festival, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, starring Charles Laughton, directed by William Dietrich. So,
William Dieterle of
Dieterle, okay, sorry,
of
excuse me.
Emile Zola
Zola.
fame.
Yeah.
Yes. Next day, September 1st, 1939. A day of more historical importance than the opening night of the very first Cannes Film Festival. That is the day that Germany invades Poland.
Interesting
And
coincidence.
and thus
They were
the
really
festival,
mad about the Cannes Film Festival starting.
Yeah.
So the festival is postponed 10 days when that happens. But that 10 days did not pass before France and the UK declared war on Germany, kicking off World War II. That happened on September 3rd, 1939. So by then, the festival is officially canceled, and World War II happens for the next couple of years. And the first real full Cannes Film Festival happens in 1946. Of course, we'll get to it in due time, but in 2002, there was a selection of films and a winner chosen for that almost Cannes Film Festival that happened in 1939. But we'll get to that if we roll it on the wheel at any point in the near future. So, how does the Cannes Film Festival work with that background in mind? About 2,000 films are submitted every year for the Cannes Selection Committee. That's whittled down to about 60 movies that are shown in various categories, including the official selection, which compete for the Palme d'Or, out of competition, and un certain regard. There are also short films and student film categories. The Cannes Selection Committee also, they choose these films and sort of attribute them to which category they should go in. And they also extend invitations to 9 jury members who serve on juries for each of those awards that I just listed. Some prerequisites for if you qualify: the films must have been produced in the last 12 months leading up to the film festival, must be theatrically released in France, which becomes a bit of a point of contention in the streaming era, and cannot have any international distribution outside of its home country before premiering at the festival. The Cannes jury members all watch the films that are assigned to their categories and provide a rank choice ballot to determine the winner.
Rank choice.
Yes, exactly. There are in the oeuvre that we'll be talking about, which would be the films competing in the official competition for the Palme d'Or. They actually give out 3 prizes. First place being the Palme d'Or, second place being the Grand Prix, and third place is the jury prize. So, would you guys like to know? I'm almost wrapped up, but would you guys like to know who has, or take a guess at who has the most Palme d'Ors? Which country has the most Palme d'Ors under its belt?
France?
France. It's France.
What a shocker.
France has given
Guess
the
what?
award.
Guess how many? Which country has the most Best Picture winners?
Well,
Yeah.
The U.S.
Yeah. Good point.
France has 26 Palme d'Ors out of the 100, even though technically it wasn't called the Palme d'Or until like 1955, but we're going all the way back to the very first almost
Whichever
festival.
films have won the top prize at Cannes
Yes.
are Palme d'Or winners.
So France has 26, the United States has 21, Italy has 14, the UK has 12, and Germany has 7.
As well as a smattering of other countries.
Of course, yes.
It's
And there's some of those that are like co-productions between numerous countries, so it counts for both, and it's all a big gobbledygook mess over there in Europe.
much less streamlined, much more all over the place compared to the Best Pictures.
And Timo, as you said, some countries have their first winner, including the film that we're talking about today, South Korea's first winner, Parasite.
Directed by Bong Joon-ho from 2019. This is a wowzer of a film. Who would like to begin? Because I think it's time that we... Enough about the festival. You're here for the festival in the small amounts, and you're here for the movie discussion in much larger amounts. So let's do that. And
Festival of Film Criticism.
Yeah.
At Backlog Banter.
That's right. That's right. Tucker.
Timo, I would love to start.
Hey, okay.
I want to interrupt you and I want to take over. Tucker doesn't get to go first.
No, he
I
doesn't.
didn't want to.
Abram, go first. What do you think about Parasite? This new viewing of it, recent viewing. It's been a while. Give me your thoughts.
Well, here's the thing, Timo. I really want to drink in my opening statement here, to be honest with you, because as we're starting this new Quest for the Bestest series, this larger narrative, one of the things that really excites me about the Palme d'Or opportunity to go through these films is that we're going to get to be exposed to a lot of really provocative and interesting film from beyond the US. And obviously, with rare exception, Parasite being one of them, we didn't get to do a whole hell of a lot of that during the first iteration of Quest. Now, of course, this is not a brand new experience for us, but I think that to me, Parasite is sort of a great place to start, and that encapsulates why this journey for us is going to be particularly interesting. But as you're saying, Timo, it is a rewatch, and allegedly, according to Tucker, who rewatches Quest videos regularly, I was the lowest on Parasite in that initial review. I don't remember at all. But in that time
3
since
years
then,
ago.
yeah, in that time since then, I have seen a lot more foreign film, studied a lot more foreign film in university, which is part of why I'm really excited about the series.
Old
But I've
uni.
also, yes, in uni, I've also rewatched Parasite for class, and now again here. So this is actually my third viewing.
Mm.
And I'm actually, and I hate to say it, but I'm a little disappointed, I have to say, because starting with Parasite means the show is just about trying to find a better movie than Parasite.
Hey, happened last time.
Right, because for people who are following along with the last series, I nominated Parasite for, in my opinion, the best film of the Best Picture canon. And after my viewing last night, I have officially put Parasite in my Letterboxd top 4,
There
which
you
is
go.
a hallowed place to be, really.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get into everything that I love about Parasite, and frankly, there's essentially nothing that I don't. I think it has an incredible script, and I think that all of the success of Parasite begins with the script. Now, there's plenty to be said about the lighting, the editing, the performance, but I think that centrally, Parasite works because this is an airtight script that operates in two very distinct modes that are always harmonious, which is the sort of sicko thriller and the very, in some ways, subversive class drama. And so I'm really excited to get into both, but I think that Parasite ultimately succeeds for me and is one of my favorite films because it is able to be both extremely class conscious and extremely just weird and unsettling, intense.
Uh-huh.
I think that this is a masterful achievement in writing.
I think what makes Parasite so exciting to me is that it came out in the perfect time for us as we were just entering college. It came out like 3 months, I think, after we started our college experience. We're now all done
Right
with that.
before COVID, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we had the chance to experience it at the ground floor and have it be a film that shaped the way that we were learning about film right as we were starting to actually learn about film through our classes, as all of us took a bunch of film classes over the course of the last 4 years. And Parasite, for me, feels so special because of that timing, but also because as the first foreign Best Picture winner and as one of the first foreign films that I remember really being talked about by people my age who were into movies, it kind of sets a really interesting bar of everything. There's so much more out to discover in the foreign film world that we hadn't really, I at least at that time hadn't really experienced a ton of. But it's such a goddamn good movie in every way you can throw at it that having that be something to like inform your knowledge just it makes me feel warm and bubbly inside. And when I think about why I love Parasite so much and subsequently why I think it's one of my favorite films of all time, one of the best movies ever made, it feels right. And that certainly comes from like the time and the place I was when I watched it, but it's such a good movie that it's hard to imagine not loving Parasite. And this is what, my 6th or 7th time watching this movie. and I was still absolutely enthralled and absolutely engaged and was noticing things on that 7th watch through. And it's just such a special movie. And we're going to be able to break down each element because you were listing off some things, Abram, like, well, you stopped about halfway through the list, buddy. You're not quite done there with all the things that it does super well. So, hey, we got like a 90-minute Quest video to like go through all of that. So, perfect.
Yeah. Tanner?
I mean, Parasite's fucking great, man. What can I say? I can try to strike a balance between Abrams' opening statement and Tucker's opening statement, where yes, I mean obviously I agree with everything that's been said. That it is like this very nice blend of social commentary. Very very potent, very clear social commentary. And like just classical Bong Joon-ho has been very open and clear about like his influences by the likes of like Hitchcock, of course, and a very modern interpolation of that kind of filmmaking. And of course, yeah, it was vastly impactful for the moment that it came out, and for us personally, it was the first subtitled film I had ever seen in theaters. It was, it has sort of like placed itself, as a letterbox user, and as that informs how I view and talk about film. It was the number one film on the platform for years and years and years.
Number 7 now.
Yeah, exactly. And interestingly, as much ire as like letterboxed heads have drawn from each other and film Twitter and whatnot, and like the oeuvre of like film bro films, Parasite is always included there, but no one ever has anything bad to say about Parasite, really. It's very interesting because it is kind of like it seems basically bulletproof from every angle you come at it at, because it is so incredibly well crafted and acted and written and edited, and top to bottom it is just kind of an impeccable film, and you just kind of like sit in it every time now. Like, I don't want to say the shine is gone on it, but it's just like, I know Parasite is like a basically perfect movie, and I watched it again for me the 4th time, I think, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, we're just knocking it out of the park. It's like watching the greatest game of like baseball ever played. It's like, that's perfect, that's perfect, that's perfect. Home run there, grand slam, done and done and done. All right,
the game ends in a tie because every hit was a home run.
Exactly.
I will note also, expect a lot of sports references in Casa Versus, if you know.
Yeah. We're really passionate about sports as a collective here. Timo.
Man, well, I there's what else can I say except that I like the three of you. I think I noticed new stuff this time on my 3rd watch. I find myself being amazed by the visual storytelling of this film. I remember talking about this in our first review, but the sets and just the way our camera moves to tell us what to think. And Bong Joon-ho is so unafraid of telling us what to think in a way that isn't heavy-handed. I receive his message quite directly, especially about class, which is all written into the film, but I think it's really translated by this visual medium, and the film works so well because it's the combination of everything that makes movies and makes them a special, like, elevated art form, because we've got this really interesting story, but we're combining it with great visual motifs that are like enhancing my understanding of what this film has to say about class. And then when we get into fun thriller, like a Hitchcockian ending that goes beyond what Hitchcock would do, it's like we're just using excellent filmmaking techniques to wow and shock us in a really visceral way that I think makes the ending of the film so bittersweet, but so satisfying in a way. It's like it ends in a perfect spot, I think. Another thing,
that last shot and everything, that last sequence, absolutely.
Yeah, it's haunting in that, but it is like, wow, I think it's enormously powerful, and it's fun. It's funny. Like, there's lots of great stuff. I was really enjoying the performances this time around. I was really able to like pay attention to them and see how the actors were making their faces in different ways, and that really stood out to me, just how good they are. Like, there is not one performance that's missing. Like, they're all hitting in this film. So,
but Timo, I agree. I also was paying for whatever reason, certain people's performances really drew me in and drew me into certain aspects of character that I don't really think of immediately when I think of the film Parasite previously to this rewatch. I want to specifically start with, because we have to start somewhere.
Yeah,
I want to start with Ki-woo and his relationship with his father, because it really hit me like how hopeful he is, because everyone else in the in the family is so like conniving and sort of underhanded in the way that they present themselves, and he is too. But when he's having these real moments with his father, he's like very genuine and very earnest and very like hopeful. When he's talking in the opening of the film, when he's going to the upper class neighborhood for the first time, he's got all of his forged documents, and he goes, I don't view this as a lie. He's being earnest. I don't view this as a lie. I will go to university next year. And then his father, Kitek, is like, yes, it's good that you have a plan, and so on and so forth. And that, of course, comes around in the end when they're in the like the flood shelter, after the massive rainstorm.
I mean, for me, it was actually the character of the wealthy mother that really drew me in. If I'm getting, it's Cho Yo Jong that played her, and her performance is very complicated to me. I was really kind of diving into the relationship between the husband and wife of the Park family, and how you know, Ki Tak continually asks Mr. Park, but you love your wife, right? And this is something that this is just like off the top of my dome here. I don't know. This is where I'm starting. But these two characters have this, like, they're in a relationship for something other than love. And there's like there's a sexual element to the relationships that's shown in that extremely uncomfortable under the couch scene, which we nominated as one of our best scenes of all the Best Picture winners.
Yes.
Particularly Cho Yo Jong's performance makes me, it's so complicated. She's so ditzy, so like kind of not really there, but at the same time, it's actually her wealth, I believe, that is causing her to, first of all, become so gullible. She just gets played like a fiddle in this film by all the different characters. But to me, it's indicated that because she hasn't known a whole lot else and is just kind of going along with whatever anyone says to her, that they could just get what they want. And I find that her performance really lends a much more complicated than she's just, I'm aloof. Maybe she wants drugs, as she says at one point in the film. I think that it is that Bong Joon-ho is attempting to really show us a bit of his inclination towards what female characters in extreme wealth act and are like.
There's also and this sort of goes back to how I was mentioning that the commentary of this film is in some ways quite subversive, especially when you think of other quote unquote eat the rich films, as there have been many of, particularly in the last couple of years. A lot of them end up becoming a sort of like catharsis of the rich person who sucks gets their comeuppance at the hands of the sort of enterprising and downtrodden lower class member. Triangle sadness, which we talked about recently, is a very clear archetype of this.
Fellow Palme d'Or winner.
Be talking about again. We'll have to discuss if we do that again.
And the interesting thing about Parasite is that Parasite doesn't really give you that pleasure, and this is something that we had a conversation about in my film class. One of the things that my professor didn't like about Parasite when she saw it for the first time is that it paints our lower class protagonist family in a very, very negative light. But I think that's what makes Parasite actually such a poignant statement on really the material conditions of this family, opposed to sort of like the intrinsic good. It's more about how that intrinsic good by context sort of gets ruined.
Yeah.
And the character of Miss Park becomes quite interesting then, because she is gullible, but she is perhaps the only character in the narrative that is solely concerned really for people around her, and is very easily and often manipulated in ways that are against her nature. There's really not a malicious bone in her body. If anything, her preoccupation with her kids is perhaps the most noble thing, or the most noble desire expressed by any character in the narrative. And so I think how she's written, and then the sensitivity in her performance, and sort of the exasperation in moments like learning learning, quote unquote, that the
Mhm.
driver is having affairs with somebody who might be on meth, or the fact that the housekeeper might have TB. The way that she feels so wrought with despair in that moment, or the way that she gets so excited holding on to this glimmer that perhaps her son can be healed through this, again, quote unquote, art therapy, I think really asks you or forces you to question and ask why Bong Joon-ho would write the characters whom we would typically associate a narrative like this with evil
Mhm.
as perhaps the almost in some ways moral good of the story. So I think that she's a really, really important character to think about when you're thinking about how Parasite works.
Yeah, I mean, she's actually kind of like the cornerstone of everything. This movie I was watching under the memory, because it has been 3 years since I saw this movie when we reviewed it that first time.
Mhm.
Under the memory that that Mr. Kim, Song Kang Ho, was the main character. He's the one that my mind jumps to when I think about this movie. But then rewatching it, I think what's so interesting about the structure of Parasite is how it is really chopped up into sections that give us a moment or multiple moments to spend with each character in specific. We get a lot of one-on-one scenes between an relatively unlikely pairing of our 6 or 7 characters that we have going on here. But Mrs. Park is the cornerstone of all of that, and she's the one that's interacting with most people. She, of course, interacts with her husband a lot, but she interacts with each of the Kim family members more so than anyone else. And especially in those one-on-one sequences where she is just with I was gonna say Jessica Ki Jung, I believe her name is.
Yep. Mhm. Yeah.
With Ki Jung talking about art therapy, or just with Ki Woo talking about the fact that he's gonna teach her daughter English, or just with Mr. Park. There is this really interesting dynamic that she brings because by they I mean the Kim family, have all talked so much about her that you feel like you know her through their eyes. They're constantly talking about, okay, we need to do this to get around her like cone of vision, ostensibly, or like her mental cone of vision, because she's has a relatively closed mind, so they can just kind of skirt around that and get what they want. There's so much talking about her that it makes her kind of the biggest presence in the movie to me. Because as I'm watching this film and as we're going section by section, okay, this is the part where Ki Woo is being introduced to the family. This is the part where Ki Jung is being introduced to the family. She is omnipresent. And even though she's the least brash character in the movie, and she's the one with the least imposing presence, I would say, and certainly the least like conniving character aspects that could sort of like grab onto your mind, she's the one with the most presence and maybe screen time, honestly.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting.
You make me think, Tucker, that in the mechanics of this story and the actual plot, she is so instrumental to the whole unraveling. It's almost like she really has a lot of the agency and a lot of the power in the early parts of the story, and because she is taken advantage of, she makes all these. She's the target of the Kim family's deceptions. They are all trying to get her to do something
Yeah.
so that she can talk to the husband. This is a kind of an interesting power dynamic reversal. If you would expect the gender dynamics of this household to be the man is ostensibly still in charge, he's kind of signing off on everything, but he's just kind of rubber stamping it.
Yeah.
It's actually the wife that is really making these errors, I guess, in the eyes of like what's going on. But she's just doing kind of what she feels is best. So there's a bit of a power shift here. The husband is almost powerless, it seems, when it comes to the hiring and firing of these people. It's what the wife wants is what rules.
This
I will
movie's
say, though-
obsessed with power dynamics.
Yes.
I will
Obsessed.
say though, it's interesting that we're talking about this, like, I guess, sort of home power structure with the Park family, and subsequently like how we are supposed to view the man and the woman, the husband and the wife in the relationship, because we can get we get explicitly told what the Kim family thinks of them when they are all fully employed, all gainfully employed by the Park family now, and they're all sitting around having a little drink, talking about how great it is that they all have
More
a
than a
job
little.
now. Sorry.
More than a little drink.
More than a little drink. But they say of Mrs. Park, they say, "Oh, she's she's so nice" or whatever, and then someone else says, "Oh, she's only so nice because she's so rich."
Yeah.
But
Hell, I would be nice if I was that rich. I would
Exactly.
be nice too.
But of Mr. Park, and this is a thing with the with the man in the basement, the housekeeper and the housekeeper's husband in the basement as well, they like toast to him and their gratitude towards him, and how kind Mr. Park is for how great he is that he's the breadwinner and he's the one that's really earning the money that pays them and so on. And I just find
And
it
then
very
Key Tech also changes to that once
Yeah,
he's trapped
exactly.
in the basement and he
Yep,
starts
yep.
saying
Doing the
basically the
thing.
same praising of Mr. Park. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just very interesting how because lots of people talk about how Kitek and then subsequently I don't recall the character who was in the basement initially. The bug-eyed dude.
Gun say, I think maybe.
How lots of people talk about how like
Yes.
that relationship, unknowing that it is to Mr. Park, is like very emblematic of like this attitude of poor people, lower class people that like, oh, we like heaping praise upon the rich and powerful when that is not really justified or called for necessarily in the societal power dynamics. But not everybody talks about how these families talk about one another, I think. And mostly, of course, we mostly see the Kims talking about the Parks.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very interesting shot when we first see Mrs. Park that I think is framed in a very telling way.
She's asleep at the table.
Yeah, because we see
shot.
behind the shoulder, out of the house to the backyard area as Mrs. Park
And in a
is
very
being shaken away.
in a very steep angle, we are looking down on her in this moment.
Mhm.
It's
Also, the
it's
sound design in that moment, Timo.
Yes,
It's
quite
like
great sound
just
design.
the barely right rustling of the trees and like it's all muted. It's very interesting.
There's a very eerie sort of voyeuristic appeal to that scene, and I think that very to your point from earlier, Timo, is a great early indication of how inherently filmically we're telling how these characters view each other. And there's this very vulturous position we begin in, but I think to go to your point, Tanner, there's something even a little bit deeper in the sort of reverence for Mr. Park. And this is something that was really solidified for me on this viewing when Key Tech has gotten his father's message through the lights.
Kiwoo.
And he's Kiwoo, my bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
When Kiwoo has gotten the message from his father and he is sort of formulating his response, and we see his vision and his idealized future for himself. His idealized future is to continue to not only live within but succeed within the exact capitalist structure that ruined his entire family. Not only does he want to keep playing in this space, he wants to live in the exact home upon which its excess destroyed multiple families. And so there's this interesting
Including killing
idea.
his sister.
Right. There's this interesting idea if you compare that first introduction to Mrs. Park to where we end the narrative. There's this shift from this sort of vulturous sense of taking advantage, how about, to a complete complacency within the narrative, within just this one character. And so I think that there's something to be said perhaps for how Mr. Park is revered, but I think that there's something even stronger to be said for the ways in which the system that Mr. Park is in large part a stand-in for is essentially propagated and perpetuated by the very people who are fundamentally wronged by it.
Now, Abram, do you think that's some sort of commentary on the world in which we live?
No, I think it's completely unrelated.
Oh, I see. Okay,
I
interesting.
think it's just like basically sci-fi movies, kind of just like coming up with unrelated.
But Abram, you raise a good point about the ending, and we're jumping to the ending. But since you mentioned it, that's like it's so interesting how, and I can't speak for everyone's experience with the film, but it's so interesting how the implicit feeling that you are supposed to get, because he's just kind of like narrating his like future plan and everything. He's like, oh, one day, and like he is very hopeful. As I said, Kiwoo is this like weirdly hopeful character throughout the film as compared to everyone else. But the implicit reading of that ending is that it's tragic because we as the audience members know it's completely unattainable for him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we are
there is
visually seeing it
Yeah.
happen, which I
Yeah.
think is a really interesting juxtaposition. And though the ending was never something that's particularly stuck out to me in the past, it really did on this previous watch of how bittersweet that is. I think everyone was describing the ending earlier. That you're right. We're like, no, that's bullshit. That's not gonna happen. I'm
Bong
sorry,
Joon-ho is
buddy.
playing on your knowledge that that's just not how things
Yeah.
work.
Especially because Kiwoo got clonked on the head like 3 times with a
He has
fucking rock.
serious
It's
brain
like,
injuries.
how could he possibly
Uh-huh.
survive this? And there's just seeing him still being hopeful, but also seeing what happened to him sort of in an external view as
Mhm.
we're able to see the damage that was done to him. You're like, man, like, good luck, buddy, but probably not going to happen.
Well, and what's
Still,
crazy
we're
about that is
seeing it happen.
yeah. What's crazy about that is, Tucker, you mentioned, like, he survived being smashed on the head by a giant rock twice, and yet we're like, yeah, there's no way he's going to be able to make enough money. Like, the juxtaposition of those two, like, aspects, like, the reality of the situation or the unreality of surviving that, and, like, his hopefulness to reach those class heights were like, yeah, I can understand that he'd survived this, but, like, there's no way he's going to make enough money to afford that house.
Interesting, yeah.
Because that's just not how things work, and Bong Joon-ho is playing on that.
I think it also speaks, and throughout this new Quest series, something we have to get better about is looking at these films from a less Americanized perspective. But I think in that Parasite won Best Picture, it's valid here. I think part of the reason that why this film did win and did resonate so much here in the U.S. is because that last idea is a very, very powerful deconstruction of the perennial American pick
Yeah.
yourself up by the bootstraps trope. And so
Pick yourself
Tucker,
up by making money, unclear how, and buying a house to save your dad.
Yeah.
yeah, where you see bittersweet, Tucker, I just see bitter, and I think that's sort of the trajectory of my understanding of Parasite, because The Rock is also something I've always sort of had some issue with.
Yeah.
I just
Very
didn't think
metaphorical.
it was especially good in Rampage, but I also think that The Rock as a
What
symbol
about
in
Skyscraper?
I think that The Rock as a symbol in Parasite is
Scholar
actually
Stone.
it's really funny. The more you think about it,
Dwayne
it's really
the Scholar
funny.
Stone Johnson.
Because as the Scholar Stone is introduced to us, there was a note about it that I had missed on my other viewings. The purpose of the stone is to bring material wealth.
Yes.
That's explicit. Now, what's interesting about that is it's that rock which so brutally smashes Kiwoo's head in what is one of the most sort of guttural shots of the entire film.
Mhm.
It's a pretty gnarly. There's a pretty gnarly shot. I think it's really effective. But when you consider this notion that what is the friend's name?
I don't.
He's played by Park Seo-joon.
Yeah. The friend's name, when he delivers the rock, there's this interesting notion because, of course, the friend is implicitly beloved by Ki-taek because he's university educated.
Yes.
So he's considered to be of this status, right? And the gift he gives to this family is a rock. And the response to that is, well, food would have been better. But now we have
Yes.
this rock.
Mm-hmm.
And the rock is going to bring us material wealth. But what is the rock doing? The rock is doing nothing. The rock is being polished by the family. The rock is being treasured by the family. But in the end, the rock smashes the skull of one of the members of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that ultimately, at the core of Parasite, is this sort of message about the complete incongruity between classes. And I think that's why this is actually in some ways an extremely radical film, because it's reinforced at many points, not only through the rock, but through smell. Smell is very
Yes,
important to
you
the
were-
narrative.
You are traveling down a line I would like to inspect. Keep going.
Yeah,
They should have shown this film in 4D smell-o-vision.
Mhm.
they should have.
Smell the old radish smell of of Mr. Kim.
There are these continual signifiers, in some ways extremely arbitrary, and in some ways incredibly intrinsic in the smell, that there is no progression. There is no class mobility for this family.
Hmm.
And I think that that is ultimately why I read Parasite as an incredibly bitter film. It's very sobering. I think that the function, in my opinion, of Parasite on the most macro level is to illustrate that things are fundamentally broken and you cannot get that. You cannot have that house. Even if you have that house killed your sister, that house killed as the news refers to him, a homeless man. That house is so many people have died, so much has been lost to get that. It's not even worth it if you could have it. And I think that's what Parasite is trying to tell us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really like where you're going with the idea that the incongruity between the classes makes for a line, a barrier that is impossible for them to cross. There is no way that they will be able to see eye to eye, and that the film, I think, makes it abundantly clear in a lot of ways. I mean, the height differences. Obviously, we move up to, signify moving up in class, and you move down to go to the lower class areas. But especially with the smell, it really stood out to me. And as the smell is something that is more intrinsic, it's something that a person has less control over, just the way that they smell. And what really drove home for me that whole thematic idea was not Mr. Park having issue with the smell, but after he talks about it to his wife, and then she is in the car and she becomes so disgusted by the smell that she has to roll the window down. But ultimately, the Kim family really can't smell whatever the smell is on themselves. It's
Yeah.
mostly, I think, just a symbol for their class, and that the lower class smells worse. And so the rich people can't stand how that is. But more so, the film is trying to say that in just the ways that they live, there's no way that they can understand what each other's lives are like. That just the way that they treat each other, and how, the experiences of the after, it brings to mind the rainstorm. So in that night, what does the Kim family have to do? They run home. Their house is flooded as a result of the rainstorm. They have to go spend the night in the shelter with everybody else. They lose all their clothes. They, probably lose a lot more than that as well. And what happens to the Kim family as a result of the rainstorm? They have to cancel their son's birthday trip and come home and then hang out in their house. The level of impact upon these two families is so wildly different to the same event that it communicates to me just that these people are so far apart. They can't become close, or they can't even know what each other is really about at
Even
all.
though they're physically existing in the same space for the vast majority of the movie.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. And
I
I
think
think
what
it clearly says this is a systemic issue, that this is not caused by the actions of any of the people. And in some ways, the actions of the people aren't even caused by themselves. They're just driven, as Abram said earlier, by circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what makes this film so compelling to me on a structural level, trying to escape a little bit of the thematic
Sure.
sinkhole that we've been talking about. Theme. But is structurally and script wise, as Abram was talking about, I think that is absolutely where this film is at its strongest and sucks me in most as a film viewer, is the domino effect this movie has. But it's not a domino knocks over another domino. It's a thing where a domino knocks over a domino twice its size, and then subsequently bigger and bigger and bigger
The meme,
until
we've all seen the meme. Yeah.
your sister is dead and your father's trapped in the basement,
Uh-huh.
all because your friend wanted to go to college abroad. And it is the amount of small things that are setups and payoffs that I think really makes this film engaging to me. And it's those sort of movies that are structured for intense viewing, for things, no single reference or action or object being out of place, that makes me engrossed by this movie to the amount that I am, and puts it up there as one of my favorite movies of all time. And even on this other watch, still noticing other things. My favorite things about this script is how it both plays with setups and payoffs in terms of dialogue and objects and places. All three things have setups and payoffs. So when we are watching the beginning of the film and we are seeing that they are leaving the window open to get free extermination, and well, I don't know, what the hell are they doing? I don't know. They're spraying chemicals on the street for whatever reason.
Yeah, probably
so
really,
that-
really
bugs.
good for you to inhale. Really
Yeah.
beneficial to your lungs.
Yeah. There you go. While they're fumigating, they leave the window open, and that's just kind of like an offhanded thing. Okay, they are so low class that their house is infested by stink bugs, and so they're doing this. But then that is maybe the longest term setup and payoff. That is why their house floods at the end of the movie, is because that window was open and the water was pouring in. Or even, again, in that first part of the movie, the fact that Mr. Park is folding the boxes very intently. And then that comes back
Yes.
in a subtle way, even later on, when he's bagging stuff in the line while Mrs. Park is on the phone. And so there are just there's actions that have consequences. There are dialogue things, like the offhanded comments about the way that the Park son has trauma from his birthday when he was a kid, and then that snowballs later on. You're like, oh god, this is why, and that makes sense. And then you see a little bit of it, and you get that fucking shot. God damn that shot. Or even, as I was saying, objects. The fact that that the Park family daughter just wants fruit, offhandedly mentions that, and we see a plate of fruit without any peaches on it, and then of course peaches come back, and 2 scenes later, and that it just enthralls me. Like, it gets my blood pumping filmically. I'm like, oh my god, they thought through this so hard that the set design and the acting and the words that they're saying and the objects that they're playing with all matter. And they all come back in some way by the end of the movie, and it feels like no stone is left unturned and no piece is left unplayed. And I absolutely love that.
Tucker, I want to talk about another script thing, and that is how the Kims BS the Parks.
Mhm.
I think that is, we talk about how, the Parks don't really have any comeuppance of any way, but it's still so enthralling and entertaining to just see them get played like a set of fiddles by the Kim family.
Mhm.
The first one I noted down was Ki-woo sort of BSing his whole like English tutoring thing, because he can teach it, obviously, but his first lesson, the one that Mrs. Park watches, he like hardly teaches any English. He just like gives the daughter this like hustle grind set mentality speech that's like taking a test is like a jungle. You have to cut through, you have to slash through each question, you have to show vigor, you have to show this and this and that. And Mrs. Park is like taken aback. She's like, oh my god, he's such a fantastic teacher. He didn't teach her anything, not that she saw. He just gave her like a Casey Neistat
I didn't teach her
speech.
anything later either.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Too
that's a
busy
good point.
snogging.
Except for one, yeah.
Yeah. But like, yeah, he just like, that's just one element of like how Bong Joon-ho writes these characters to be so clever, but not necessarily like intelligent. Like they're very clever, and they know how to get what they want by not explicitly doing the thing that would immediately get them there. Like Ki-woo gets the teaching job not by teaching her well, but by like playing to this like work hard like mentality that the Parks would have, and just like wowing them with that instead of like actually good teaching.
There's this really interesting dynamic between a lot of these scenes of the manipulation and sort of facade that are very frictionless, and then there's always a moment where things get screwed up. So I think that initial lesson is a great example, because that whole thing goes off so smoothly, but then as we're looking at the drawing on the wall, or the painting on the wall, and Ki-woo asks Mrs. Park, "Oh, is this a self-portrait?"
No,
And then
No, he
replies-
says, oh no, it's a chimpanzee.
Oh, it's a chimpanzee.
Uh-huh.
She says, yeah. Then she says, "No, it's a self-portrait."
Oh.
perfect pause. That's a perfect, that moment right there is like the trifecta of acting, scripting, and directing wrapped up to
Right.
one perfect comedic moment where it's like the perfect length of pause, and he's like, sure enough.
He goes, sure enough, and he talks about how the mind of a child can't be fully understood.
Uh-huh.
There's this feeling that he almost broke the facade.
Yeah.
He almost made it obvious, but he pulls it back at the last moment. And there's this tension between pulling things off very smoothly and then coming right up to the line. And the notion of the line is very important, obviously, with Key-Tech and Mr. Park in the car. And so there are these moments where everything seems smooth, and then there's a stinger. And the stingers are always quite sort of up, like on my limbic system or my nervous system, whatever the fuck it is. I'm like, ooh, there's a problem here.
Uh-huh.
The eyes on the road line from
Yep.
Mr. Kim is a wonderful example of this. But then there's also, as we get deeper into the narrative, this feeling that the family in their various roles as separate players, as Jessica, as Mr. Kim, as everybody as their own entities, start to maybe slip up a little bit.
Yeah.
The ass grab is one of my favorites
Yeah.
because it's this it's this Icarus moment almost of we're getting a little close to the sun here, right?
Icarus flying too close to the moon, if you will.
Oh, Tanner, oh, Tanner. But then obviously that culminates in, again, to your point, Timo, which I nominated for the best scene in Quest, this incredibly long and arduous night when the narrative really begins to unfold
worse.
and fall apart for so many reasons. But this is also where the pace slows really far down.
Oh, yeah.
Because the Peaches scene, which we also nominated, the whole setting up of
Mario?
the Peaches and the allergy and
Yes.
everything, not the Jack Black song, Tucker, but that's close. Almost as good as a Jack Black song.
Yeah.
The editing
If
there
Mario
is-
had won Best Picture, that would have been nominated for Best
Right.
Scene.
the editing as we're executing that plan is so fast and it's so chaotic, and there's a really
so
great
fast, the movie almost isn't catching up. Like the
Yeah.
dialogue is overlapping things that haven't quite happened yet, and the editing and the cinematography is like, oh god, we need to really get to this part, because they're just like chop 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 chop.
There's this really up-tempo sensation to it, as you're saying, but then when we're under the table, we're really drinking in the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's in moments like this where the mastery of the editing becomes extremely apparent. For sure.
Yeah. Abram, I want to just quickly revisit your little moment about these moment of tensions where you have the I'm thinking about power. This movie's all about power. In those moments, it shows to us who really has the power in the scene. Despite us, we side with the Kim family, we root for them, and for for most of it, they are the ones who are pulling the strings and are ultimately powerful. But those moments are a reinforcement of the traditional class dynamics in which they suddenly become, subservient, in which the Park family reminds the Kims who's really in charge, who's paying them, who's got your finger on the button and the leverage. While it may seem one way, there's the opposite is also true in the background. And if they slip up, it's all over, which creates excellent tension throughout the film. I mean, just talk about a great tense masterpiece.
If I had one sentence to describe the vibe of the Kim family with that worth, I think it'd be, it's about drive, it's about power. We stay hungry, we devour, put in the work, put in the hours, and take what's ours.
A little rock talk on this episode. I dig it. I like it. Little moment of tension, and then also tying back into what Tucker had mentioned about
Tension mention?
objects as tension, a little tension mention, and just how Bong Joon-ho singles out single objects and makes them these Fisher points that mean so much. one moment that gets me every single time that I watch this movie is when we're all falling to shit, when, the birthday party is going on and we're in the closing moments of the film, and we're breaking out of the basement, essentially, is when Kiwoo goes down there. And first of all, the fantastic shot of him like looking at I had the housekeeper's name written down, but thank you, talking Moon Guang. He's like looking at her dead body, and like the dog catcher like noose or whatever is like framing up around his head, and then when he go zoop, and he's dragged all the way back, and he slammed the little like pipe in between the pipes running up and down the walls.
One shot.
And then he has to like gets out of there. He fights off the guy. He's running up the stairs, and you can hear the clang 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 of the little handle as he's going up the stairs. He's like, he's gonna fucking grab that thing. I know he's gonna grab the little handle on that noose, on that garroting wire, and he does right at the moment when he gets up there, and he goes zoop, feet up in the air, slam back down on the ground. Like, that is such a fantastically paced and directed moment that all ties around like the sound editing and this object, this like weird wire noose thing that gets introduced right there with the little metal pipe handle that was like clanging all the way up the cement
what even
stairs.
is it? Why is it down there? What the hell is that?
I don't know, but it works so effectively, and that's the thing where Bong Joon-ho is like, what do I put into this scene to like extremely crank up the stakes here, and he finds the perfect thing to do it.
Yeah,
I think it's also worth actually rewinding to your point, Tanner, and as we're introducing sort of Moon Guang and what's his name, Gun Se, her husband, into the narrative. I think the point of their meeting, the Kim's family meeting them, is really interesting because obviously, as you're saying, Tanner, we know how it ends. Yeah. But if we go back to where it begins, I think it nicely dovetails with what Timo was saying a moment ago about power dynamics, because now we see two families who are essentially in the exact same class position.
Yeah. And end up in the exact same physically position.
And they end up in the same physical position. Again, to Timo's point, physically lower in the house. Invisibly lower in the house, which is also very important to what the film is trying to convey. But this is where, to just veer into theme again, just for a moment.
Okay.
This is where, again,
as a treat.
The Parasite's notion about the corruption of the lower class through context is very important, because we see very clearly the ladder being kicked back down behind the Kim family, as there is no willingness at first to help Moon Guang feed her husband.
There's no solidarity.
There's no class solidarity.
None
exactly
whatsoever.
Correct.
And Abram, I might be jumping the gun on you here a bit, but
it.
like the immediate change in attitude when the leverage shifts, when
cis line,
when exactly the cis line, how that changes when the Kims fall down the stairs and Kiwoo
slipperyest stairs ever made.
Yeah, slipperyest stairs ever made. He's like, "Dad, get off my leg," or whatever. The immediate attitude change, the immediate flip in leverage and who has it and who has the blackmail materials in that scene, and it's all contained in that phone. Again, another object that Bong Joon-ho singles out and like makes a Fisher point of like everyone's trying to get this thing, everyone's trying to grab it. They're all scrabbling over each other when we get to that living room scene.
Shot is so good.
Yeah, we run out. Ki Jung runs out to get the peaches and dumps them all over Moon Guang.
Yeah.
The other is because, and that scene in particular, I think best illustrates the two sides of Parasite meeting: the class consciousness, social messaging, and the just plot level, direction level, editing level thriller. Because where we meet here, it's not only a scene of incredible tension, because we know that we are one finger press away from the video being sent, but that scene is a perfect illustration of the way in which wedge issues in our real world put people of the same class against each other instead of against what's above them, because the families are instead literally beating the shit out of each other instead of acknowledging, well, I'm rubbing peaches on somebody who's in no better or worse of a position in their life than I am. And what they're doing is trying to, again, curry favor with the family that put them all in this shitty position in the first place. there's a really interesting notion here about distraction from solidarity. And I think that that's ultimately at the heart of that whole little scuffle, and it's just orchestrated within this beautifully tense and, as the film is, very blunt in its depiction of violence exchange between the families.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Here,
That
okay.
is the moment of the movie.
Here's something.
Because,
oh, go ahead, Tucker.
well, what makes Parasite so special to me is the fact that it is able to have one of the freakiest, creepiest thrillers in its back half, and also one of the most like relatively lighthearted and kind of fun. Like
It's a romp.
first
Yeah.
2/3, yeah. And it makes it feel unlike almost any other movie, because if you are me watching this movie on my laptop, not knowing anything about it in 2019, or you're my mom, having been told by me to watch this movie because it's great, and you don't know that's coming, you are thrown on your fucking ass.
Yeah.
On the moment when she shows up, and okay, it's a little bit uncomfortable, and how are they going to deal with this? But then the fact that the Saw bathroom is in the basement of this nice house. And then there's a guy down there, and then they start beating up on each other, and people start dying and left and right, and you're like, oh god. And the fact that you come up for air just for a little bit, because we're back, the Park family's back, and we're in the nice house, and it's daytime, and we're setting up a party. We're brought back into the levity of, like, the physical levity of Park family and light and daytime.
It's a bright
and
sunny
niceness.
day. There's no pollution
Yeah.
in the air because it rained the
But
night
the
before.
darkness is still there
Uh-huh.
in the bottom, because you're like, oh god, there's a guy in the basement.
All of the Kim family look like a little bit like sweatier and like a little bit more like put out and like more tired because of everything they've gone through. So yeah, that's the like darkness like imposing itself onto our characters. It's a great point, Tucker.
Speaking of the violence and the very visceral violence in this film, I want to bring up this idea that in a lot of, I was just talking, I was asking some other friends, like, a lot of people seen this movie, so I was polling some ideas about what people thought of it, and what someone told me was that the depiction of women in this film is a stark departure from how women in a lot of Korean films and particularly K-dramas are shown, and that this film allows its women to get nasty and ugly in ways that a lot of Korean films kind of shifted to maybe like this person was arguing to me that a 180-degree version of that is what is most often shown in Korean films, is that women are often very, very like, I don't know, they are clean and they're
delicate. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they're somewhat liberated as a result of that. Korea's maybe not the most socially liberated country in the world, but this film, Parasite, really rails against that and shows people how they are and how they would really react in a situation, and is not afraid to have women look how they really are and have them act in ways that makes total sense for the scene, which apparently goes quite against what a lot of other films in Korea do.
Well, yeah,
Ki-jung and Chung-suk are actually like the most nasty characters in the movie.
Tucker, thank you for mentioning that. The scene where they are all drinking in the Park's house and they're having a good time, and then Chung-suk starts like needling after Ki-taek a little bit, and then he like, it's this very interesting glimpse into like the family dynamic of the Kims, where he like turns on her and starts like berating her, and then like grabs her by the collar of the shirt as if to like hit her or something. But she never really takes it seriously, but the kids do.
She starts laughing first.
Exactly. And then he's like, nah, never mind. It's this very interesting glimpse into that family dynamic, and specifically the dynamic between this married couple who have been married for years and years, presumably. Just like how they act around each other when they're not like trying to weasel their way into an upper class family's lives and get these like blue collar positions within a white collar family. Very interesting. Also that Chung-suk is like, just a character element of her is that she is like a medal winning hammer thrower, which is like the least delicate sport you can think of, is tying a big metal ball to a chain and hucking it through the air.
Yeah, which is another great setup and payoff.
Exactly.
For absolutely no reason other than character texture, I guess. Is seeing that picture, just as a passing glance in the opening shot of the movie, having her celebrating and throwing a ball when they're hanging out on the lawn, and then later on the line, the one thing that that Kitek ends up grabbing when they go back to the house when it's flooded is the medal that she won, and the frame is filled with
Water,
septic water that's coming out of this toilet going.
Great effects, just great effects.
Oh,
But yeah, just an example. I think that's kind of the perfect example of even to like the molecular, atomic, subatomic level of this movie, everything has a place.
yeah.
And that moment could have just been the first thing. It could have just been you see a picture and that adds a moment of character texture. The fact that it's brought back into subtle ways that aren't drilled in at all as plot level elements,
Yeah.
but that obviously are very important to this family, gives it a lot of extra texture and lets you realize that, yeah, there's such an attention to detail here that everything is plotted out, even if it ultimately almost doesn't matter.
Yeah. Since we're on the note of Chung Suk, just quickly, I want to say I love the look on her face. There's a lot of great looks that people give in this movie.
That's what I was really loving when I was watching these
The
performances.
look that she gives when we enter the basement for the first time, and she is the most shocked that anyone has ever been on film. Just looking around, wide-eyed, like, what is this? Who is this guy? How does she know this was down here? What's going on? My family is right behind me, but she can't know that my family is here.
That moment actually doesn't start when she sees the basement. It's when she sees Moonbong pressed up again between the bookshelf and the thing, just like, and that's actually the real moment where you're like, what the fuck is happening here? Because this middle-aged woman is just like pressed up between the wall and like a bookshelf. It's hilarious.
Another look that I want to mention quickly, since I brought that one up, is very beginning, after they fold the pizza boxes and they deliver them to like the pizza palace lady or whatever, and she's like, 1 out of 4 of these suck. And then they all just kind of look towards Kitek, and he just kind of like gives them this and keeps walking, because like he was so dead set while everyone else is coughing on folding them correctly, and then it's clearly his that are all fucked up, and he's like, who could it have been? I don't know.
Okay, we've talked enough about this here story and this here script. Let's talk about this here cinematography, because this movie has beautiful, excellent shots. We named one looking at Mrs. Park to start the film, her introductory shot. But, I mean, do you guys have any other shots in your mind that just stick out? There are so many. I'll just name a quite obvious one. We are running. It's the rainstorm. With this camera pan, or not pans. It what's the right word?
Tilts?
No, it pedestals down because it's it's straight up testing myself here. I'm no longer in school, but I'll try to make you proud. The pedestal down with the rain, with all these crisscrossing wires. It's so chaotic. It really just demonstrates everything that our characters are feeling. And we descend in that shot. One of my favorite in the film, but there are so many. The first shot of the house is like this empty street, real low angle, looking up, kind of wide angle lens too, and we get that exterior driveway, exterior door kind of shot. And to me, it's so imposing, and it just highlights this architecture of a wall and a fortress that this house kind of is.
Yeah.
It's very evocative, and it really, really sets the tone for what's going to be happening. Even right there at the beginning of the film, I think these shots are kind of hinting that there's a lot more to come.
Yeah.
My favorite shot in the entire film comes towards the end, and Tucker actually alluded to it. It's this incredible shot of Ki Jung smoking on top of the toilet that's spewing out sludge. It's so interesting in its framing as the water takes up so much of the frame, and she's just sitting on this toilet just smoking. The sort of hopelessness contained within that composition, I think, is incredible. And I think that in some ways, for me, the entire vibe and purpose of Parasite is in the confines of that shot. I entirely love this ultimate notion of futility that's communicated there. So that's definitely my favorite.
I guess if you have a toilet exploding in your movie, you're gonna win the Palme d'Or. Parasite, Triangle of Sadness.
That's a great point.
Fair enough.
Great point.
99 others, 98
So
others.
something that we'll see. We'll keep the toilet counter going. Timo, make a little graphic. Make a little number at the bottom.
Make a little
Toilet
like
counter. Just keep it there. Every episode we don't talk about it, but it goes up by 1 every time there's a toilet. And by the end of 100, we see what it's at.
Tucker, do you have a favorite shot, Tucker? Because I have some.
You say your shot, and then
yeah.
I'm gonna
change it up a little bit.
I had a thing.
Okay, sorry. I got a series of 4, and they all come boom, 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 boom right after each other. It's after the peach scene, which I turned to Tucker and I said, "Hey, has anyone ever mentioned that that's a really fucking fantastic scene? That peach scene." Anyway, it's after that. We start on this sort of close up of Daesung looking out the window into the backyard, and there's light streaming and beautiful shot. Reverse shot to what he's looking at. It's Mrs. Park firing Moon Guang. And again, light streaming in, the shadows are placed very nicely on them. They're just like staged very nicely. They're not really talking or moving around, but it's like clearly after she's broken the news to Moon Guang. And then we cut back to a wide of the entire house, and it's just Daesung looking out the window again, more streaming in light, beautiful stuff. And then the last one is Moon Guang walking down the street. It's like a harsh like color palette 180, like where it was all beautiful whites and oranges and yellows streaming in, and it's like dark blue of her walking down the street. It's like evening time. It's just gorgeous, and she's just standing there, and then she like turns around to look up at the house one more time. I just love that, like, that series of 4 where they're all like perfectly composed.
So the thing that I noticed while I Googled Parasite best shots to get a little bit of get a little bit of inspiration.
Yeah.
But there was one that always came to mind as like the defining Parasite shot for me, which is the outside of the house. This house is one of my favorite locations. I love the greens. I love the cold grays and stuff. But the inside of the house, there's this constant use of the framing of just straight down the barrel of the house.
Yeah.
And you've got a wall in the middle and the staircase going up on one side of the screen. And a sort of little window in between. There's a plant in the middle, and then there's the deep framing of the kitchen and then the dining room down the other side. And that shot always gets me because they use that shot multiple times throughout the movie to have people waiting at the bottom of the stairs or moving up the stairs or just to frame someone really deep in the background to give a sense of scale. But then I kind of had a realization because I'm like, okay, another classic shot that Parasite is known for is the shot of them walking down the stairs to find their house, and seeing the just gigantic like 2 sets of stairs that are like zigzag down the frame. And I'm like, okay, that's 2 stairs shots in this movie. Like, hold on, then what's the other shot that people love in this movie? Is the guy in the basement coming up the stairs and his face being framed by stairs. And then I'm like, hold on, and then there's another one, which is Mr. Park coming up the stairs and the 3 lights coming on. And then Abram talking about his favorite shot, which is Ki Jung sitting on top of a toilet that is at the top of the set of stairs. And I'm like,
Tucker,
this
I got another one.
Is so stairs focused.
Ki Woo was seeing the house for the first time, walking up those stairs.
Walking upstairs. Yeah, there are 4 sets of stairs in the Park house. Then there are basically only stairs traveling between houses. And then their house at the bottom of all of those stairs is subsequently full of stairs because they need to go down this staircase to get into their house because it's a semi-basement. And then somehow there's another set of stairs in the thing because that's where the toilet's at the top. And it's just like, I just had this realization of the physical structure that the film is known for, of up to get to the Park house and down to get to the Kim house, is framed through so many different shots of stairs, and the importance that stairs play in this movie for so many of the most pivotal plot-wise and tonally shot-wise compositions of this film, I think is really, really fascinating. And it's not something I really ever like specifically thought about until I was looking at like stairs. Oh God!
You know what?
It's like a goddamn MC Eschner painting in here.
It's so metaphorical, bro. It's so metaphorical.
It is metaphorical.
Metaphorical, good. Nicely done.
I'm gonna look at my notes here. Do we have anything else that I wanted to mention?
There's another S category
So?
that I could go on a little bit about.
Score.
Wait, are you going from cinematography with an S to sound?
Hey, it's a
Yes.
podcast. I'm not writing no damn essay here. You're listening. They both make the same sound.
The three S's: sight, sound, and cinematography.
Script, sound, and
There you go.
I was really humored by the sound design in this movie this time around. This movie kind of, I feel like, gives it away in the sound design in one moment. Ki-woo gets to the house. He rings the doorbell. He gets let in. That sound of that door unlocking is so massive. It's so loud and so... That door sounds like you're unlocking an airlock to your spaceship. Like, it goes like... And then the door like... and it's like, this door would... No way would it make that noise in real life. But it's so... It's so foreboding. The film just like, I don't know, it's telling me what is coming in that moment. And I'm like, this door can't possibly close with such a loud noise after he walks through it. A couple seconds later, like my like speakers are shaking. I'm like, oh my God. There's so many moments where this film, I think, really uses nice heightened design. Really goes for that pulpy, like calling attention to itself sound design. But then other times it's like almost silent. There's so little going on. It's very still. And that could be just as tense, I think, because of what's happening on the screen. So I think the sound design in this film is just really, really excellent. It's not like out of the box, but it's playing... I definitely think it's playing more obviously than the cinematography is. The cinematography is kind of simple, very effective, but it isn't always being super flashy. Sound design can get a little flashy sometimes, and I like it for that. I think it works, especially when it's a thriller. I mean, come on. I want to hear that stone thunk against his head with just, utter disgusting.
Or like we get a Tar moment when Moon Guang is kicked down the stairs and she lands at the bottom. We get a right there. Another Tar moment. Hashtag Tar moment.
Two films with great imposing architecture.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to sound, Timo, but I'm gonna go score for a second because we all know and love the Parasite score. But it really stuck out to me how varied it was this time. Specifically, one that I wrote down, and then like 2 seconds later, Tucker made a joke about like the snare drum bit when we're discovering the underwear in the Mercedes. I know, what is it? What kind of car is it?
Benz, Tanner.
It's a
Benz.
Benz.
So you're
Yes.
right. Yeah.
Mercedes Benz. I got it.
Holy shit.
Ain't no
but yeah,
Beamers
like
in this movie.
It's like this like
Yeah,
score of like, whoa, what
And
is
I'm
this
like, oh,
coming
here
from?
comes the Birdman score. What the hell's
Yeah.
happening here? But it's great, yeah.
Yeah.
But it is very varied because we not only get this sort of snare drum and like light piano score to fuel that moment, but there's like full like choir moments and like full like sweeping orchestral moments, which is not the kind of score that you would associate with a thriller or a modern film set in just urban living areas. But it really does span the gamut of what kind of music they're using to make the scenes feel very distinct. And I think that's another thing that I really appreciate about this movie is there are some movies where scenes flow into one another, but what I love about Parasite is it's not concerned with that. Shit just stops and then we are somewhere else entirely. And it's very contained in its sequences. And the way that it actually ends up becoming connected is in those setups and payoffs, both script-wise and location-wise and object-wise, as I was saying. But we have the start of this movie is like 5 incredibly distinct sequences. Is the start of the movie in the house, and then when he shows up for the first time, and then Ki Jung being introduced for the first time, and then Ki Tek being introduced for the first time, and it's like, oh, this is that section, this is that section, and then we get the placing of the peach, and it's like, okay, these are like solidified building blocks that make this film feel unshakable.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think that's all I have, folks. I think we went a lot longer than our first Parasite episode, which is about 30 minutes, I think.
24, Tanner.
24, really? It's sub 30? That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, because Zoom had a 30-minute time limit.
That's
And we probably
Tucker, that's
goofed a
great
little
point.
bit or had to edit something out. Or
Yeah. But I think this one's, well, dear audience member, dear viewer, I think it's probably about an hour 24. So, that's pretty nice. Does anyone else have anything else to mention about the unbeknownst film Parasite?
Why would you use that word? What the fuck does that mean?
I wanted
He's
to
using it ironically,
unknown.
Tucker.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think unbeknownst works.
No, it doesn't. I started to say my brain.
Unbeknownst to the general public, this movie came out.
Yes. My brain put forward unknown. I'm like, let me ask a little. Let me add a little je ne sais quoi to it.
Sure. Because we're French here today.
Let's
Yeah,
add
yeah.
a little score to the spreadsheet.
Yeah,
Hello.
we get one film on our list. We've got a number 1 spot right now.
I'm a hot take. I think this should go at number 1.
I think this should go at number
Okay.
1 too.
Okay. We'll
But
see.
we got to
We'll
give
see.
it an average score. So while we deliberate here, I'm gonna punch in some numbers.
I've got mine.
I'm ready to go. Who are we waiting on? Tucker's
I got it.
Tucker's got to update his 1.0 that's been sitting in the
Tucker gave it
spreadsheet
a
since the
one.
I
beginning
did-
of-
We're locking that in.
I got it ready.
I typed it in.
Yeah, we're
All right.
good to go.
Okay.
The score for Parasite in 3, 2, 1. And we have a number. If you could imagine, this film has a very high score. A very, very high score. We really like this movie.
Gonna be hard to beat.
It is going to be hard to beat. Perhaps it could be beat. The number is 9.9. They're going to have to be a
Yeah.
good movie to beat that, I say.
Yeah, a basically perfect movie.
No, I think this is exactly what happened last time. Parasite came out with a 9.9. Well, when we did the great re-rank and assigned actual scores to it and everything. And then Schindler's List came up with a vengeance and took the top spot with a 10 out of 10.
Yeah. But the 9.9 is made up of 4 scores, starting from the bottom. I gave it a 9.6 because I was thinking about the list, and there's a possibility that there might be better films. So I give it. I think it is also a 10 film, but we got to keep this list in somewhat manageable order. Tanner gave it a 9.8, and then both Tucker and Abram gave it a flat 10.0, the highest score a film can receive.
Yeah, I mean, here's the reality. Starting with Parasite, is it boring in some ways? Yes, because I can't give Parasite anything lower than a 10. But
That's fair.
also, now, what's going to be Parasite? Now, perhaps that's what is going to make the show fun, right?
Yeah.
Because we didn't think anything was... Schindler's List, really, from the top rope came.
Uh-huh.
There are actually 2 movies above Parasite. Birdman's also above Parasite.
Oh,
That's right.
good
Forgot
point.
about that.
Yeah.
So we had a couple come from the top rope. Now, it's possible that here on episode 1, we've already finished Quest for the Bestest Palme d'Or films.
Yeah.
And frankly, I'd be happy with that if we were to right our wrong from the last show and actually put Parasite on top of the list.
Yep.
However, just because the premise of the show is already in jeopardy, don't stop watching. Because frankly, even though I have to say, just because of how much I love this film and how masterful I think it is, I'm going to be hard-pressed to find many films better than it. I think we could find many films more interesting than it. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm so excited about this show,
Pretty
because we're going to get to
boring
go to some countries and some genres that we would have had no real access to on the last Quest for the Bestest. So ultimately, even if 100 episodes later, Parasite is still number 1, I think we're in for 99 extremely fun and provocative reviews after this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just as long as I don't have to read any more subtitles, because boy, are my eyes tired, you know?
I have news for you, Tanner. I have news for you. Well, I think it is time for
Discover? Oh boy.
a triumphant return of our most beloved member of Quest for the Bestest. That's gonna be the Spin Wheel.
Now,
Look
if
at
I were a
those
forward
slices.
thinker, I would have come up with a new wheel song, but I didn't.
I was thinking about it, but we need this one. It's too special.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's
that's a
too
good point.
special. It'd be
Okay.
wrong if you rewrote it.
Let's see if we could remember it after all
Saint
after
Frank.
all these years.
Do you not remember it?
Oh, he remembers it.
Oh,
Of course he remembers it. He said it over 100 times.
Okay, you ready, Tanner?
I am ready.
Soccer Premier.
Wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital? Is it unreal? Wheel, what's your deal?
And the Wheel's deal is movie number 59.
Wow.
So we got to go onto our list. Tucker, do you have the list pulled up?
I got
I
it
do.
pulled up right here. Oh, you got it too, Tucker?
That's
Read it
my
out.
job. You're the singer.
Sorry.
He's the spinner.
Okay.
I'm the sayer. Abram, I don't
Sex
know. You're just the
appeal.
guy.
I didn't
Sex
know.
appeal.
He's
I
the
didn't know if we were
spectator.
changing up. I didn't know if we were changing up the roles here or not. You know, I'm sorry. I am sorry that I stepped out of line.
Don't cross the
Hard to
line.
rectify that. Hey, that's Parasite, baby.
Film number 59,
number-
Tucker.
Number 59 is the 1983 winner of the Palme d'Or, directed by Shohei Imamura and starring Ken Ogata, Sumiko Sakamoto, and Tonpei Hidari. This is The Ballad of Narayama.
Okay.
This right here is why I'm so excited about this series.
I don't know.
Who here has seen this movie?
No.
None.
Who here
No one.
has heard of this movie?
No one.
Nope.
No.
No, I do. I
go.
did compile some Cannes Film Festival trivia for every year for every movie that we'd be talking about. Should I say that
Is that
now?
Parasite?
Should I? What? Oh,
Is that
I didn't read it
Parasite?
out for this episode.
Yeah, you
Thank
didn't do any. Do you want to do it at the end?
Yeah, I'll do it right now.
Why not? Might as well have it in the
We
video.
got to get the
In the
trivia in there
future-
somewhere.
In future episodes, yes, I'll because I was about to ask, like, should I read it out now or later? I'll just read it out in the given episode. But yes, for Parasite, thank you for
Why would you talk
reminding
about
me.
it in another episode?
I don't know. Well,
That
like,
makes sense.
we say the movie and then we say, oh, this is the context of
Yeah,
the
it could be a
Cannes
little
Film
could be a
Festival.
little preview for next time.
Oh,
Exactly.
sure.
I
Yeah.
kinda like that. I gotta
But-
say, I kind of like that.
Okay. Well, I'll do Parasite right now, and we'll see where we stand. Okay.
Instead of doing it in the last episode.
Parasite.
Circle.
Parasite 2019, of course. The jury president that year was someone whose film we talked about just a few minutes ago. Alejandro González Iñárritu was the jury president that year, representing the country of Mexico. Other jury members included Elle Fanning, Yorgos Lanthimos, Powell Polakowski, Kelly Reichert, and Alice Vorwalker.
Okay.
21 films were submitted for competition that year. Amongst them were also The Dead Don't Die by Jim Jarmusch, A Hidden Life by Terrence Malick, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by Quentin Tarantino, Pain and Glory by Pedro Almodovar, Portrait of a Lady on Fire by Celine Sciamma, and Sorry We Missed You by Ken Loach, who is a name that we best get familiar with if we're doing the Cannes Film Festival.
Well,
But yes, those are all films that Parasite beat to take home the top prize.
Wow. Old Yorgos was in favor of Parasite. Well,
I did.
I can understand why. Okay.
But yes, I'll read out.
This is a very Dogtooth meets Birdman kind of movie.
kind of.
And I'm not even joking.
Yeah. But yeah, I will read out the Cannes Film Festival notes for The Ballad of Narayama when we get to that next time.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it from us here at Backlot Banter. Thank you all for joining me and the rest of us here as we embark on a new adventure, really, into film history, into film analysis. My God, does it feel good to be back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Stay warm, keep cool, and peace. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm going to say it right now. Stay warm, keep cool, and peace.